In the beginning of July, I adventured to the west coast of Canada, and I stood at the end of the country, staring into the vastness of the ocean. Like Luffy, Captain Ahab, and Ishmael, I felt the ocean pull me in and call me, and in looking at that endless horizon, I began to understand Luffy, Ishmael, and Ahab. I began to understand freedom, but my eyes could not see everything, for our modern ocean is not one that is free, but it is one that is ruled by laws, for even the oceans were conquered. However, Ichiro Oda's One Piece takes place on an ocean that is not entirely conquered, and it is a story that is led by pirates who exist outside of the law and authority. It is this position that allows Oda to write and illustrate a story that stands against unjust authorities and unjust hierarchies. It is also a story that stands against oppression, slavery, hatred, and racism. But further beyond these layers, One Piece plants its feet and boldly stands against fascism, totalitarianism, and the world order. Hi, I'm Lost, and welcome to my show, Lost Futures. In my last two episodes, I have discussed the fascism in Attack on Titans, and in the second, I presented a contrast with Vinland Saga, where Yukimaru does violence right. In this episode, I aim to look at the 1997 pirate adventure manga One Piece, written and drawn by Ichiro Oda and his team. For those who do not know, One Piece is a pirate manga where the reader follows the pirate Monkey D. Luffy on his adventures to find the treasure One Piece and to become the Pirate King. As the reader follows Luffy on his journey, we begin to unravel the world and its mysteries. For one, we learn the world is controlled and ruled by a world government, who use the Marines to maintain power and order. Now Luffy and his crew tend to clash with the world government, as he would declare war on them on the Justice Island Ennis lobby. However, Oda also sprinkles the story with a vast cast, factions, and actors, as there are giants, revolutionaries, rogue marines, hardcore marines, CP9, CP0, pirates of all kinds, and of course the legendary Buggy the Clown. One Piece is a behemoth, being 1,053 chapters long, but its length is a positive because Oda is able to flesh out his world and build upon elements he snuck in the very early parts of the story. Oda's world is alive, in which each island the reader learns and discovers it with the crew, and in each island they kind of sometimes uncover something about the hidden history, the Void Century, or the D's. The story almost operates as a mystery, where Oda leaves clues or puzzle pieces, which all lead to a giant picture, and there are countless One Piece YouTubers out there whose jobs are to theorize and to predict what is going to happen next. You know what? I'm a theorist too. I'm a critical theorist. Bam, here's some AFAC theory. Panopticons, lost futures and ontology, critical race theory, and of course, Frantz Fanon. So why is One Piece important to examine? Isn't it just a silly pirate story? Why should academics take it seriously? But I think academics have. In 2020, Alcus Cooper wrote an excellent article on the dilemmas Oda positions in his story. I've also seen pristine professors in my university praise Oda for being a master of a storyteller. But for me, I think the message of One Piece is revolutionary, and that's why I'm so interested and so invested in it. I also think that there are many messages that are universal and connect to a variety of struggles around the world. For an example, whenever a tyrant is introduced into the story, I and many Arabs think of the dictators who rule the Middle East with an iron fist. Now, will I look at all of One Piece? No. I have to be selective in my analysis, or else this video is going to be 5 hours long and you will all be asleep. For you to understand how One Piece acts as a piece of literature that stands against slavery, racism, hatred, tyranny, hierarchies, and fascist ideas, I must first show you how the One Piece world operates, and from there I'll be able to illustrate how Oda challenges the authoritarian dystopian world he has created with the notion of freedom, or more accurately, liberation. Also, keep in mind that here in this video, I'm not arguing One Piece is fascist. Rather, there are fascistic elements that Oda sprinkles in, and they are mostly seen in those who rule the world. These fascistic elements are clear and unambiguously challenged by Luffy, his father, and many others. This clear opposition to fascist elements, for me, makes it an anti-fascist piece of literature. But let's get into the video, so jump on my ship, the Going Lost Futures, and become my nakama, for we are going on a cruise into the belly of the beast. Before I can get into how the One Piece world operates, I must first note that the One Piece world is not monolithically governed by the world government. Rather, Oda displays a diversity in governance of each island, for some are governed by tyrants, some are governed by mayors, others by pirates, and the majority are governed by kings and queens. Now, although the world government does not rule everything, it does force its power with the Marines and the Heavenly Tributes, where kingdoms or islands that are part of the world government must pay a fee to the Celestial Dragon. So in a sense, the world is subjugated, and those who have to pay the most are the citizens and the starving poor, for if they do not pay up, they are the ones who are punished and burned and killed by the Celestial Dragons and the nobles of their kingdoms. The One Piece world constructed by Oda works with a set of established hierarchies, which have been cemented by the world government to maintain law and order. So, on the top of this hierarchy, you have the 5 Elder Celestial Dragons, who run the show. Below them are the Celestial Dragons, who live atop of the world in the holy city of Marixism. Below the Celestial Dragons are the world nobles, the kings, and the queens, who are not Celestial Dragons and do not have royal blood because they are considered as mere humans who live in the realm below. Only those in the realm above are considered pure Celestial Dragons, and dragons who leave the Holy City are considered as mere mortals, right? They lose their status. Anyways, below these kings and queens are the capitalists, who are those that run the economy of the world. They run the slave trade, they run the war economy. Below them are the middle class, and we don't see them all that often. And then below that middle class, we have the working class people, as is seen in Enies Lobby or Water 7, where you have the shipwrights who are working and building the ships and adding the labor, and that entire, it's really interesting when you look at it. Like that entire economy that ties Water 7 to the other city, and Tom kind of comes in and he builds the sea train to resurrect that economy and that working class mentality, and it's centered around the working class. Below these working class people are the starving poor, who are seen in the Goa Kingdom. Right? If you look at the Great Terminal in the Gold Kingdom, you will see the starving poor, and later in the story, you'll see the starving poor again, but in the Wano Kuni arc, which is not connected to the world government, and it's also showcasing that, yes, the world government rules over the world, and there are starving poor that are caused because of their rule, but even those outside of the world government, there are starving people, and the structure and the hierarchy of government is replicated in other kingdoms, such as in Fisherman Island and in Wano. So when you get to there, you'll kind of see what I'm talking about. But I'm not going to talk about Wano here. This is kind of like a Wano spoiler-free kind of thing. So keep in mind that kingdoms in the One Piece world do have militaries, and they do create their own arms, but the world government has its own military and police force. And these are the Marines, who fall right under the Celestial Dragons. But above the Marines, there are the Cipher Poles, who are like our CIA and the FBI. The Marines are to keep the peace and fight pirates, while Cipher Pole does the bidding of the Celestial Dragons and often work directly under their orders. Their name, Cipher, is also a symbol for shield, meaning they are the force that protects the Celestial Dragon. Later, after Dressrosa, we kind of understand this relationship between the Celestial Dragons and the Marines more, because for the Celestial Dragons and the Elders who are on the top, the Marines are the face of the world government. They are not those who actually do the biddings of them, right? Like Celestial Dragons would and do command the Marines, but they're just the face. Cipher Pole is actually the ones that go in and do the commands of the world government. I'd say that Cypher Pole is more trusted by the Celestial Dragon than the Marines, which is quite interesting, because then what does that mean for Cypher Pole? And if you watch and read the story, you kind of understand that the Cypher Pole agents are almost like slaves. I'm throwing Randy Troy here, but they're like slaves. They do not have a choice in what they do, and they are completely obedient to the Celestial Dragons, what they want. Rather than Marines, you have a variety of justices. Like Smoker goes against Celestial Dragons, Aokiji does his own thing. Akainu is kind of a loyal dog, but he also really gets pissed when the Celestial Dragons does a thing that without his permission, because he thinks he's the top dog, being admiral, but he's not, right? He's not actually in control of anything. He doesn't really have power. Those are 3 brief examples, but justice for Oda is not a clear-cut thing. It is something that his characters carry differently, and there is a diversity in it. And it's more complex than what the justice to CP0, CP9 carry, because in truth, their justice is tied to the Celestial Dragons and their desire, while the Marines, in many cases, go rogue and do whatever they feel is just. And as you'll see in a minute or so, it is this feeling of justice and the different ideologies and philosophies that are at play with the Marines that make them a lot more interesting, diverse, and more of agents in the story than CP0 and CP9. Because CP9 and CP0, when you encounter them in the story, they do what they are commanded to do. But there are Marines throughout the story that do not do what the world government or the Celestial Dragons desire from them, right? You have Smoker in Arabasta, Fujitora in Dressrosa, and other Marines who carry different philosophies that clash with each other. So the body of the Marines is not monolithic. They are still the police force though, and they still want peace and order, and they still clash against the pirates, but they are a more interesting force than the Cypher Poles. As I stated earlier, the Marines are not a monolithic force and are complex. And I think Cooper agrees with this position, as he does an excellent job going over what kind of Marines there are, but also how they face the different dilemmas the One Piece world presents. He first starts by looking at Admiral or Vice Admiral Akainu, who goes by the justice thorough justice. And Cooper demonstrates what is meant by thorough justice by looking at the O'Haran situation, where when the Buster Carl was called. And Cooper looks at how Akainu does not hesitate to kill innocents, that there is a chance that an O'Haran may be on the ship. And so for Akainu, there's a thoroughness to justice, that if you do the job, like killing and genociding the island of O'Hara, you gotta do it right. And by doing it right, he means killing every single scholar, whether there were innocents or scholars, or you gotta kill them all to be thorough. However, as Cooper points out, there are those in the Marines who are more severe than Akainu and follow the form of justice, such as Onigumo, who is a firm believer in absolute justice, as he shoots a Marine for questioning orders. Furthermore, in the anime, he's shown giving a speech about after some really big deaths in the Paramount War, and he states that even if 1,000 Marines were to die, they should still wipe out the fleeing pirates and show the world the meaning of justice. What does justice mean? It means instilling fear in the hearts of all pirates and to show the world that the Marines can defeat evil. This is super duper Bush speak. Like, this is how Bush spoke, where he was like, all the Muslims are evil. That's right. Yeah, even here in America, they're time bombs. They are evil. It's very reminiscent of that. After Onigumu, you have Rob Lucci, who is a member of CP9, but we'll get into him later. On the other hand, there are good Marines who oppose these extreme forms of justice. There's Aokiji, who's a chill dude, Smoker, who Luffy ends up liking, Garp the hero, who does not obey the nobles or the Celestial Dragons, Fujitora, a blind man who is a fan of Monkey D. Luffy, and of course, the GOAT, Kobe, who is the second character we meet in the story, and so he's quite important. But Kobe is actually brave as heck, as he was one of the people who stands against Akainu Onigumo, and he questions the ways of life when the war had already ended. Kobe is GOAT. What can be seen through all of this is that Oda created a very complex force which is not entirely evil, but there is a system at play here that creates certain Marines and corrupts them. Finally, the Marines also have a hierarchy in place. You have the commander-in-chief, right? The guy that's on the top, Kong. The fleet admiral, the admirals, the vice admirals, and so on and so on and so on. You have a pecking order in the Marines that establish the hierarchy and the chain of command, like many other militaries, but it's very important looking at it here because, well, this is an entire world that revolves around hierarchy. On the top of the world, there are the celestial dragons, who are perceived by the normal folk as the gods of the One Piece world. They are the descendants of the creators. They also have untouchable and unchallenging authority. Although they have this supreme power, they are also white supremacists of the One Piece world. And due to this supremacy, they exhibit most elements of fascism. Like most fascists and those on the alt-right, these celestial dragons believe in purity, as it is shown in the Sabaody arc, where we first meet them walking around town in their astronauts-like suits to avoid breathing the same air as the mere human. For to breathe the same air, to share blood, and to live amongst these mere mortals are all aspects that are forbidden in celestial dragon culture. They are descendants of the creators, the gods, and they stamp their place in the hierarchy by living on top of the One Piece world. They are not perceived as humans, but carry themselves as celestial beings who carry the blood of their ancestors. And since they carry such a blood, they may enslave and subjugate anyone they desire. These supremacist beliefs are translated on screen, as in their introduction we see these celestial dragons riding and pulling slaves. Their power in the One Piece world allows them to turn any woman into a white or slave girl, any fishman giant into a vehicle they could ride, and any person that they desire to be enslaved becomes their property. None can challenge them because they wield the systems of justice and power, but some have. Now you might say, isn't that just white supremacy? And I'll say it sure is. But the concept of degrading is tied to fascist thought, as simply coming into contact with the other mere beings is perceived as infectious. The stress on cancer or disease is highly tied to fascism, and their holy land is pure. It is free of anything that could degrade it. It is their thought that makes nobles copy their way of being and mirror the same structure in their kingdoms, where nobles are placed above and walled away from the poor and the scum of society. Furthermore, the highly hierarchical world and systems the celestial dragons set up, which prioritize harmony, is akin to Japanism. Secondly, the concept of cleansing, which pops up first in Luffy's flashback with the nobles of Goa Kingdom, but in chapter 908, the 5 elders mention a greater cleansing. What is being cleansed? Well, for the first cleansing, which was issued through a fire, it was meant to clean the trash of society, which were the starving poor and those who lived in the ghetto of the Grey Terminal. The second cleansing is up in the air, but it will probably be any opposition to the system. Third, there is the mythic past that is cemented, and every person in the One Piece world is forced to believe in the dominant mythic history that the 20 kingdoms united and created the benevolent, peaceful world government, where in truth it was actually a history of slavery, genocide, and ethnic cleansing. Any who explored the Void Century, the 100-year void where after world government was created, or seeks the true history, were wiped out and are still being wiped out. The world government finds it very important to protect the mythic past that it was built on, as it further justifies their existence and demonizes the D-Clan and those who seek liberation. The mythic past then bleeds into the final fascist tendency. The final fascist tendency that they illustrate is anti-intellectualism, as is shown in Enies Lobby and in more detail in Robin's flashback. Here we see the 5 elders desperately trying to prevent the secrets of the Void Century from leaking by assigning the Marines to perform what is called a buster call on the Scholar Island of Ohara. This island contained the Library of Ohara, a place that held the most knowledge about the One Piece world in regard to history and archaeology. And the 5 elders wiped it off the face of the earth. Before they did, they would check what Professor Clover knew, and Clover began to spit out truth, telling the 5 elders that there was this ancient kingdom that once held immense power, and it challenged the world government, and its name was... we never hear it, because Professor Clover is shot dead But what is seen here is that the world government takes immense effort to protect the secret of the Void Sentry in this kingdom. It goes at full length to kill an entire island to prevent any secrets or any knowledge from leaking. Heck, even before the Buster Call occurs, reading ancient script was an illegal crime, and it still is, because Robin, the last living O'Haran, at the age of 5 was given an 89,000 berry bounty since she can read them. She is also considered one of the most dangerous persons on the earth, but the Revolutionaries see her more as the flame of the revolution. Whenever the secrets of the One Piece world are brought up, there is a risk that that character might get assassinated, such as Robin, Tom, Doflamingo, Whitebeard, Roger, and even Monkey D. Luffy. These three fascistic tendencies illustrate that the Celestial Dragons are fascistic, and there are more examples, but that enters what I would call big spoilers of how the world works. What I want you all to understand is that in all fascist governments we have seen so far, there has been authoritarianism and totalitarianism. That is because it is central to how fascists rule and think. The nation is a singular being acting under the voice of a strongman, and any opposition to the order is cleansed. However, unlike Ishiyama, Oda makes it extremely clear that these are the bad guys and their ideologies are disgusting. He does this by having Luffy punch a celestial dragon in the face. And the way I see it, the dude was punching a fascist. In this punch, Luffy has committed an unspeakable crime. He hit a god, a descendant of the creator, but Luffy doesn't care. They bought one of his friends and were racist to another fisherman friend called Hachi. That was enough to punch a celestial dragon. The takeaway from here is that celestial dragons are the embodiment of oppression, of unjust authority, and hierarchies. But they also exercise fascist tendencies. But on top of that, Oda stresses that these people are void of humanity. Finally, there are two important factions that I must talk about. The first being the Revolutionaries, who run in the background and directly sabotage the celestial dragons. They are led by the infamous Monkey D. Dragon. Dragon's foes are not the individual kingdoms that make up the world government, but rather, as Koala states, the true foe of the Revolutionary Army are the Celestial Dragons, and they are the ones who Dragon wages war against and focuses most of his effort combating and sabotaging. As his revolutionary army fight the system that creates these unjust hierarchies and the positions of power and supremacy. How will he do this? That's not known yet. But he has waged war against the Celestial Dragons, and he does intend to fight the system and usher in a revolution. The final faction that makes the world operate are the pirates. And there are many that shake the world. You have Roger, the Pirate King, the man who started the Great Pirate Era, Whitebeard, the strongest man in the world, Shanks, Kaido, Big Mom, and the 11 supernovas such as Blackbeard, Luffy, Zoro, Kid, Law, all of these characters. Of course, there are the 7 warlords of the sea, who are state-sanctioned pirates and resemble privateers. Luffy has so far defeated 3, and these pirates are more often than not tyrants such as Moria and Doflamingo, who puppeteer their people. Of the 7, Doflamingo is the most interesting because he is actually a celestial dragon that fell from grace and carries that god complex and the idea that he is yet to achieve his proper place ruling over ordinary people. His arc in Dressrosa is actually a microcosm of the structures and the systems the world government has used to rule over their people and the world. One Piece YouTuber Mr. Morge does an excellent job explaining this and explaining how Dressrosa functions as a microcosm in his video analysis on Dressrosa, so check that out after me. Mr. Morge is great, his analysis videos just rock, and we gotta give the dude some love. All these elements, though, work simultaneously, as with every action Luffy takes, whether it's him being Crocodile, brings a reaction from the entire world. Everything that I've stated thus far, from the top, the Celestial Dragons to the Marines to the CPs to the, kings and queens and the nobles, they all get a reaction. And so as Luffy takes an action, like beating up Crocodile, the One Piece world shifts and turns, and wills and dreams begin to clash. Now, how does Oda counter the oppression, the injustice, the hatred, the slavery, the racism, the white supremacy, the authoritarian structures, the fascistic tendencies, and more broadly speaking, the world order? Oda counters these forces by having Luffy chase and dream of freedom. But this is not the childish freedom Eden desired, which is a freedom for himself, his friends, and the island. Luffy's freedom is liberation. I believe Luffy's ultimate dream is to liberate the world, and once all is free, he will be too. Although in every arc we watch the Straw Hats fight oppression and beat the bad guys, they never do it alone. In many story arcs, there are others who aid the Straw Hats fight alongside Luffy. He is their hope, but he is also a beacon of liberation, and it is his will that inspires them to throw off their chains placed on them by their oppressors and fight and revolt. Joining hands and liberating each other from the structures of oppression, these people form a relationship with Luffy and his crew. They become his friends, and he does not seek to rule these people nor subjugate them to his will, but rather in every arc he parties with them and brings joy into their heart. One of Oda's favorite panels is not one of his bombastic fights, but of the grand party on Sky Island, where the crew and the Shandians and the Skypians are all dancing around the fire, drumming the drums of liberation as they signal the freedom from the tyrannical rule of God Enel. Another example where ordinary people help Luffy and give him a reason to fight can be seen in Arabasta, where Luffy is helped out by a princess. Yeah, she's nobility, but the Nefertari family were the only ones that did not ascend to Marixism, making them mere mortals and seen as traitors. One could also argue that Luffy wanted to kick Crocodile's ass even before he knew Vivi's reasons, but as you watch Arabasta, you understand that Vivi gives him a reason to fight and show some courage. For Luffy, Crocodile did not simply steal wealth or the rain, but rather he stole the essence that made Arabasta for Vivi. He stole the island, but also the island's heart, and he manipulated its people to slaughter one another. It's powerful seeing Luffy stand up to such a cruel man, and it is in this battle where we first hear Luffy state that he will surpass Crocodile. And in saying this, Luffy is kind of saying he'll be a better pirate, but Luffy is also stating that he'll surpass Crocodile by being a better and kinder person, a person that cares for strangers and the ailing hearts of a nation. Luffy cares about liberation. In Arabasta and the East Blue, Oda constructs pirate captains and marines who wield their power and their position through intimidation and strength. But each of these characters can be contrasted to how Luffy wields power and how he uses his position. These pirates and marines for the most part use fear to rule their ships and to cement the social hierarchies. These hierarchies are later cemented by the world government when we see... I'm not telling you that. These unjust hierarchies are contrasted with Luffy, who sees himself as more of an equal to his crew, and he gets angry when he sees captains abuse their power or their crew. This can be seen in Arabasta, where Vivi comments to Ace that she thought Ace would be worried about Luffy because he's not like your typical captain. Ace replies by saying that Luffy's always been like this, and it's his pace. Now, does Luffy lead? Yeah, he does. But he doesn't rule with fear, nor does he command his crew to do his biddings, nor does he sacrifice them. Luffy, in my perspective, and I know a lot of people argue about like hierarchies of the crew, but I think Luffy sees himself as equal, right? He is the captain, but all of his crew have different roles that aid and make the ship run, and there are things that he can't do, and he admits to that, and he's fine with that. Now, some might say Luffy cannot lead, but I think Luffy doesn't lead like other captains because he trusts his crew and also gives them the freedom to do what they feel is right. So that's how Luffy challenges hierarchies. But he also challenges the mythic past to an extent. And although Luffy is not interested in the past, he has Robin, whose dreams to learn of the Void Century. And since the beginning of the story, Oda has been toeing the line between if it is Luffy's free will or destiny to turn the world upside down. But what is known is that whoever finds One Piece, the entire mythic past set and constructed by the world government will shatter, and it will spread like a wildfire. This is something that was confirmed with Whitebeard at his death. Spoiler, spoiler, spoiler. But the strongest man in the world, does die. But in his last words, he confirms that One Piece does exist, and that those who find it will truly turn the world upside down. And it is that moment, that discovery, that the world government fears the most. And who are those that will carry the will of Roger, the will of Ace? The will of D is yet to be known. So trusting his crew is one thing, but what is central to Luffy's dream to become Pirate King is freedom. And there's a dilemma here, as a king is one who typically rules, but Luffy does not want to rule. He does not want to conquer the sea, but he wants to become the one who is the most free. This chaotic and almost nonsensical freedom counters the tightly controlled world order, and Luffy may or may not know what he is doing, but he kind of gets it. In Dressrosa, Luffy reflects on how this kingdom resembles his own kingdom, where in Dressrosa there are those who were considered trash or failures, who were shot down a trash chute and turned into slaves for Doflamingo. And this mirrors his kingdom, the Goa Kingdom, where the poor were caged in the ghetto and were given the scraps of the wealthy. Thinking back, Luffy realizes that Dressrosa and the Goa Kingdoms were bird cages, where rulers were puppet masters who used their powers to cast the poor as outcasts and kept a firm grip on his people and the social hierarchies that they put in place. In being suffocated by Doflamingo's cage, Luffy would seek to break the strings or the chains that have been ironed on the hearts of its citizens. In this light, Luffy counters both oppression, structures of power, fixed hierarchies, and fights a fallen celestial dragon who metaphorically uses strings, fear, and tyranny over his people. Again, Mr. Morris did a great analysis video on this arc. Hey, just want to throw in this small edit here. I really want to hammer home that Oda focuses and humanizes those who are poor, who are suffering, and who are under oppression. I think this is a great contrast to make between how the celestial dragons, those on the top, are void of humanity, and those on the bottom, those who are starving. And yeah, sure, he shows their rage when they find Doflamingo and his family and they're trying to kill them. But in most situations, he shows the humanity of those who are poor and those who are suffering. Now, Luffy does not only reflect, but works with those who are considered trash or the outcasts of society. For example, Zoro is a lost soul, Nami is a thief, Usopp is a liar and a god, Sanji is a pervert, Chopper is a human reindeer who kind of looked like a monster, but isn't really a monster. Frankie was an underground gangster. Robin is an assassin, but also, well, Luffy didn't know, but she was considered like a demon child who was hated. Brook is a perv, and the 10th is a spoiler. So for your typical shonen, that would be enough. But Oda also layers the story well with history, and it's a history that contains supremacy, hatred, and racism. The main characters in adventuring to discover islands can come face to face and combat the supremacy, the hatred, and the racism. We first see the supremacy very early in the story when we enter Arlong Park and meet one of the most annoying fishmen in the world, Arlong. Arlong carries the belief that fishmen are the superior beings and the humans are weak and deserving of death or enslavement. And seeing this, a reader's reaction may be to hate Arlong, to think that all fishmen carry the same belief. But Oda would leave the fishmen and let it settle until Thriller Bark. After Thriller Bark, we enter the arc called Sabaody, where Oda would introduce the history and the conflict between fishmen and humans. See, 200 years ago, humans carried the tradition to enslave fishmen and place rigid rules in society that discriminated against them. Although 200 years ago the enslavement ended, the discrimination and the racism continues, and the One Piece world in general remains segregated, where fishmen are forced to live below the sea and away from the sun. Whenever fishermen are seen, they are considered monsters, cancerous, void of humanity, and violent beings. This all gets revealed in snippets in Sabaody, but is further fleshed out in the Fishman Island arc. However, Sabaody showcases how the 200 years old traditions still live on, and there is even slave auctions and slavers who kidnap mermaid and merfolks to sell them on the market. So in Sabaody, we see the Straw Hat's friend Kami get kidnapped and get auctioned off. And who buys her? A celestial dragon. By introducing the celestial dragons, Oda flips the positions of supremacy, and Oda showcases those who truly rule the world and the power they have at their disposal. But Oda is also showing another side of history. However, that's not all, because Monkey D. Luffy is shattering the established history and the established order, and he does this by punching a celestial dragon in the face. This punch is monumental because it shows that Luffy is anti-racist, that he is anti-authoritarian, and that he does not fear the so-called gods. However, the punch is also symbolic because Monkey D. Luffy stands against fascism and injustice. However, Fishman Impression and the dilemma of supremacy does not end there, because as Luffy descends down to the ocean floor, he meets Hody Jones, who is Arlong 2.0. Oda uses Hody to mirror the Celestial Dragons, as Hody believes that the fishmen are supreme beings, and that those who are weak or disobedient are deserving to be enslaved, and so he enslaves both humans and merfolk. Now, Hody Jones is a great villain, because with him, Oda is able to explore unadulterated hatred. And as the readers read, they learn that humans have never caused any harm to Hody, and that he is pursuing a path of Shura, a path of hatred, and that his character is in fact the embodiment of pure hatred. He is metaphorically a great villain, and Fishman Island rocks as an arc. After fighting hatred, Oda would draw one of the most beautiful scenes, showcasing unity between merfolk and the humans, as Pirate Jinbei shares his blood with Luffy. In this scene, Oda highlights the peace and the love between the two beings, and a shared aim of them living underneath the same sun. In my opinion, it is one of the most beautiful scenes in anime, because it strengthens the bond between merfolk and the Straw Hats. And this relationship is vital in creating a world that has one piece. Whenever I'm asked what I think the great treasure One Piece is, I always point at Randy Troy, who believes that Oda is actually aiming for a One Piece, a world that is not subjugated by the fires of war, to slavery, to racism, discrimination, injustice, unjust hierarchies, to white supremacy, to tyranny. It is a world that is liberated. It is a world that no longer sees those who are called useless as trash, and a world where everyone may eat and no one will ever starve. It's a world where merfolks, giants, minks, dwarves, sky islanders, and humans can all live under the same sun and party. They could party and feel joy as the drums of liberation echo throughout the world. However, these drums do not simply beat in the pages of the manga, but seep out into our world. And I bet there are many people out there who have been inspired by Oda to write, to draw, and to fight injustice. I bet there are people currently living under tyranny and want to hear those drums of liberation. They want a Luffy-like figure to come out and save them, and to simply punch Bashar al-Assad in his fucking face. However, a Luffy-like figure will not arrive to save the day. And so I think we must inherit his will, because his dream will never end. And if it doesn't inspire you to take action and to fight for justice in the real world, then I hope One Piece convinces you to be a better person, a kinder person, a person who accepts people who are different from you, whether they're Arab like me, or indigenous, or black, or trans, or non-binary, or ace, or Asian. We should not simply accept them or tolerate them, but love them and support them, because Monkey D. Luffy would. We should all unite and throw away our chains and strive for a world that has one piece. To the end of the video, I hope you watched it all to the end, and to those who did, congratulations to hear me ramble for the next minute or so. If you liked the video, please like it, please share it, please show it to any One Piece fans. I'd love to hear their thoughts on it. And if you really made it to the end, please comment and tell me what your favorite arc in One Piece is. Or if you don't know what One Piece is, tell me if you're interested, if you're not really interested, or if I piqued your interest or something. I don't know, tell me what you liked about this video, or what you hated. Was the audio good? Because I had received a lot of comments about my audio. But this time I took really good care to make sure the audio sounds good and that it doesn't pop or click, or you don't hear my mouth go blah 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 or something. please subscribe. I think that's kind of the last thing I want to tell you. I want to hit 1,000 subscribers. This is probably going to be released on my birthday, so subscribe for my birthday. You know, that would be one of the greatest presents I'll ever receive. A subscription from you. But seriously, I worked really hard on this video, and it took me a lot of effort to write it, to think it, to record it, to edit it, and grab all those citations. I hope Shueisha doesn't just axe it. Like, please, Shueisha, do not axe my channel. I worked really hard on this. Like, please, Shueisha, spare me. Please, man. Please. I know you're watching me jump. I know you're watching me. You know, I just showed Sakata Gintoki on my last channel, and I know I caught your eye. Okay, but like Gintoki, I could just let me off the hook. Actually, it's hilarious about how many lawsuits Gintama went through. So if I get into a lawsuit with Shueisha, rip, I'm just destroyed. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope to catch you all next time. Peace.